Hold on tight, this is huge. Canada just turned its back on the US, redirecting to $100 billion in oil to China and Japan. Trump's tariff blitz is crumbling, markets are shaking, and global trade is flipping upside down in July 2025. Watch closely, this could change everything. Smash that like button, subscribe, and let's unpack the biggest trade shock of the year. Picture this: Canada, America's closest ally, just slammed the door on US energy markets. i.e. Trump's 35% tariffs on Canadian goods, set to hit August 1, 2025, pushed Ottawa to make a bold move. The Trans Mountain Pipeline, a $34 billion beast, is now pumping to 199,000 barrels of oil per day to China, more than to the US for the first time in history. Japan's in on the action too, sealing a $550 billion trade deal with Canada on July 22, 2025. That's to $100 billion in energy exports, bypassing the US economy entirely. Prime Minister Mark Carney didn't hold back. We're securing Canada's future with partners who value stability. Is this Canada's masterstroke or a high-stakes gamble? Here's the jaw-dropper. China's refiners imported a record 7.3 million barrels of Canadian crude in March, and April's numbers are climbing higher. Japan's factories are now fueled by Canadian oil, slashing reliance on US supplies. This isn't just about oil, it's a signal to the world Canada's done playing second fiddle. Exports are buzzing. Canada's pivot to Asia is a game-changer. But how did we get here? Trump thought he could strong-arm Canada with tariffs. Big mistake. On July 11, 2025, he announced a 35% levy on Canadian imports, citing fentanyl smuggling and border security. He claimed it's about saving American lives, but the fallout's hitting American wallets. The Dow tanked 600 points on July 14, 2025, as investors panicked over trade tensions. The Canadian dollar and Mexican peso slid to percent against the dollar. Economists warn these tariffs could cost US households $1,300 extra in 2025 alone. And Canada's response: they're not begging, they're pivoting to Asia. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick tried to spin it on Fox News: we're listening to Canada, they'll do better. But Canada's not buying it. They're forging new trade routes with Asia, leaving Trump scrambling. Ex-users are calling it Trump's tariffs are blowing up in his face. Did he underestimate Canada's backbone? Let's see who's cashing in. While Trump's tariffs misfire, China and Japan are laughing all the way to the bank. China slashed US oil imports by 90% after Trump's 10% tariff made American crude too pricey. Instead, they're gorging on Canadian oil, with shipments hitting record highs. Japan's $550 billion deal with Canada, signed July 22, 2025, locks in energy to power its tech giants like Sony and Toyota. This isn't just a trade shift, it's a geopolitical earthquake. Exports are screaming, China's outsmarting Trump again. And Japan's stealing America's thunder. Here's the twist: China's not just buying oil, they're positioning Canada as a long-term ally. Japan's deal could spark an Asia-Pacific trade bloc, sidelining the US. This pivot could reshape global alliances for decades. Is the US losing its grip on trade dominance? Let's talk consequences. Trump's tariffs are hitting Americans where it hurts, their wallets. With Canada redirecting oil to Asia, US refineries in the Midwest are facing shortages. Gasoline prices could spike 25% by year-end, per Reuters. Grocery costs are climbing to tariffs on Canadian produce could add $500 annually to family budgets. The Midwest, reliant on 4 million barrels daily from Canada, is bracing for pain. Ex-users are fuming. Trump's tariffs are making gas unaffordable. And it's not just consumers. US automakers like General Motors are losing $1.1 billion in profits due to higher costs, per Yahoo Finance. Jobs are at risk too. If Canada cuts exports further, US refineries could lay off thousands. The National Association of Manufacturers warns tariffs could slash 500,000 US jobs by 2026. Trump's America First plan is backfiring, and voters are noticing. Will this cost him politically? Canada's pivot isn't risk-free. Redirecting to $100 billion in oil to Asia sounds bold, but it's a logistical nightmare. The Trans Mountain Pipeline, at 890,000 barrels per day, can't handle all of Canada's exports yet. Building new pipelines, like the shelved Energy East or Northern Gateway, could take years and billions per Financial Post. China's 100% tariff on Canadian canola and pork, retaliation for Canada's taxes on Chinese EVs, are already biting. Ex-Post's war, Canada's economy could take a hit. Alberta's Premier Danielle Smith admitted on March 12, 2025, "We're looking to Asia, but it's a long road." The Bank of Canada's Tiff Macklem warned on February 23, 2025, tariffs could permanently cripple Canada's economy, with 500,000 jobs at risk in Ontario alone. If Stockholm talks fail, Canada could face a double whammy: US tariffs and Chinese retaliation. Is Canada's pivot a genius move or a dangerous bluff? The ripple effects are global. The World Bank slashed its 2025 growth forecast to 2.3%, blaming tariffs. If Stockholm talks, set for July 28 to 29, 2025, collapse, we could see a full-blown trade crisis. China's stockpiling resources to outlast Trump, while Canada's exploring deals with South Korea and Europe. The EU's threatening 30% tariffs on $100 billion of U.S. goods if no deals reached by August 1. Per Yahoo Finance, ex-users are grim. Global recession's coming. Supply chains are already buckling. Toy makers like Mattel are pausing Christmas orders due to tariff costs. Per the New York Times, inflation's looming. Tariffs could push U.S. consumer prices up 5 to 10% by 2026, per economists. Developing nations, reliant on U.S. and Canadian exports, could face shortages. Is this the end of the global trade order as we know it? The clock's ticking? Stockholm's the last chance to avoid a tariff spiral. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent claims trade with China is in a good place, but China's not budging. They filed a WTO complaint against U.S. tariffs. Canada's Mark Carney is pushing for a deal, but Trump's demanding reciprocal terms. If talks fail, expect more retaliation. China could tighten rare earth exports, and Canada might revive Energy East to bypass the U.S. entirely. Ex-Post speculate, will Canada join BRICS to stick it to Trump? Long term, this could redraw the trade map. An Asia-Pacific bloc led by China and Japan could emerge, while the U.S. risks isolation. Consumers worldwide face higher prices, and businesses face supply chain chaos. The question is, who blinks first, Trump, Canada, or China? This is the trade battle of 2025, and it's shaking the world. Will Canada's $200 billion pivot outsmart Trump? Can Stockholm save us from a recession? Drop your take in the comments, smash that like button, and subscribe to stay ahead of the chaos. Share this video. Your friends need to know what's coming. See you in the next one.